Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, happy solstice, and happy New Year. This is episode 175 of the Conscious Resistance Live, the final episode of 2025, and today's show is all about 2025 in review, my top stories of 2025, not the most important stories of, the entire world, because obviously that's a subjective opinion, but my opinions on what I believe are the most important stories of 2025, specifically that I covered, that I reported on or wrote articles about. And also we're going to talk about 2026 and what's ahead. And actually that's where we're going to start. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys, as always, that this show is brought to you by Civil, CIVL.com. It's been brought to you by Civil since September, and it's been a really great partnership, and I'm hoping in the new year we can continue to work together. You can go to civl.com/TCR to learn more. This week, this Wednesday, December 31st, is the final week of the 10-week opt-out challenge that I was participating in along with John Bush. I think this is the most extensive challenge you can find out there that gives you tips and tricks on unbanking, financial sovereignty, getting off big tech, learning, to get more connected to your food supply, thinking about land, thinking about travel, and everything that is really not only staring us in the face here in 2025, but as we go into 2026, even more important than ever. And this is exclusively on the Civil platform. So if you're curious, you can go to civil.com/TCR. You can sign up for $50 a year. You get access to all of their content, or just $5 a month. And you can use the code TCR20. And as I said, this show is brought to you by Civil. And so because of them, for the last 3 months, it's September, October, November, December, 4 months, we've been working together, and it's allowed me to continue to do this show and have a little bit of a financial security myself. So thank you to everybody who has signed up on Civil. We'll tell you more about them as the show progresses. And of course, the best place to find my content, guys, is always going to be theconsciousresistance.com. And I hope more and more of you will sign up for my email list at theconsciousresistance.com in 2026, because as I've been telling you guys in recent weeks, I am currently banned from Facebook. I'm actually banned from messaging people on Instagram right now too, for some reason. And I'm sure there will be more bans ahead in 2026 if things progress. So the best place to always get my content is going to go to theconsciousresistance.com, sign up for the email list, check the website on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and you'll get everything that I've got going on there. So before we get going, as I said, it's the end of the year. It's holiday season. As you can see by the Christmas tree behind me, I'm here in Texas visiting family for another few days, getting to spend time with my nieces and nephews. And it's been really wonderful and beautiful. And I hope whatever you're doing, that you had time with people that you care about over the Christmas holidays, the solstice holidays, and whatever you're going to do for New Year's. Be safe, take care of yourself. And again, think about what you did in 2025, or maybe what you didn't get to, and start to plan for 2026. I'm not a big person who focuses on resolutions, but I do think when we have a whole new set of 12 months, we get one more rotation around the sun. For those of you who believe in space and the sun, we have the opportunity to use that as motivation to say, okay, well, I accomplished so many good things in 2025. I want to do even more. Or maybe this year I'm going to take more time to relax. Or I didn't quite get to everything I wanted in 2025. What can I do to ensure that I do accomplish those goals in 2026? So let me know in the comments what you're focused on. What did you accomplish in 2025? What did you not get to? And today's show, as I said, is going to be a year in review, not only of my most important stories, but of the different types of work that I personally was doing in 2025. And hopefully you guys will find that interesting. So this is not going to be about any of the latest breaking news, although some of the topics I cover do relate to what's going on in the world at the present moment. But it's more about looking back over the past 12 months and then again, looking ahead in the year to come. So before we do that, though, in terms of the year to come, I've been asking you guys for the last few weeks a little bit of a poll I've been putting out there. I'd like to know, what do you out there, faithful viewer, listener, wherever you're watching or listening from, what do you want me to do in 2026? I am contemplating continuing to do my Conscious Resistance Live, the show you're watching right now, which I've been doing infrequently since 2013, and every Monday now for the last 4 months that I've been partnered with Civil. I'm thinking about continuing to do this every Monday in 2026, where I break down the weekly news and dissect it from a nonpartisan, non-biased, as objective as possible perspective that I believe I can maintain and have. I'm also thinking about bringing back my solutions-focused podcast, which is called The Activation. I originally started The Activation because I got sick of doing this show and sick of talking about the news all the time. So what do you prefer? Are you more interested in me doing weekly news breakdowns? Are you more interested in me doing solutions-focused conversations like the activation? Or a third option, are you interested in me focusing more on documentaries? We're going to talk a bit about how the Pyramid of Power is about to come to a close. And I don't have any big project in mind, and I'm not going to immediately rush into anything. But in 2026, I could potentially focus on more mini documentaries, maybe on a monthly basis, especially if you guys sign up at theconsciousresistance.com/invest and continue to support me on the Substack and buy me a coffee so I can do that kind of work. What do you want from me? Those are the main three options I'm putting out there. And a lot of you have said both, do it all, etc. And while I appreciate that vote of support, I don't think I have the bandwidth to do it. Yes, I'm a very busy person, and many people constantly comment on, Derrick, I don't know how you do all of it, but I'm going to try to, pull back. I've got some big things to focus on 2026, including building on the land, which I'll talk about in a bit. So I don't think I could commit to doing 2 podcasts a week and mini documentaries. I think I could maybe do 1 podcast a week and 1 mini documentary a month, maybe something like that. I'm open to different ideas. Maybe one week I do Monday, the news breakdown. The next week it's a solutions focused interview and, back and forth, or just focus on solutions focused interviews, or just the news breakdown and mini documentary. I'm open to some combination of that, but I don't think I could do all 3, 2 podcasts and mini documentaries and have a relationship and have a life and build on the land. So let me know in the comments, whether you're listening, watching live, or wherever. Let me know what you think about that, and I'd love to. And I do value your thoughts and your comments. Everybody who's been commenting, I put a poll up on Telegram, on Twitter, on YouTube. I sent it out to my email list. I am reading those messages, and I am considering them. So thank you very much to everybody who does comment and share your thoughts. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the year ahead, which in some ways is also a year in review. But the year ahead, what 2026 holds in terms of the world we're facing, I mean, it's staring us in the face. Biometrics, digital IDs. Yes, that was a threat last year as we began 2025. It's even more of a threat right now because the agenda, as we move closer and closer to the year 2030 and the Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals and Great Reset and all this sort of stuff, it is advancing. We did not see a slowing down of this agenda in 2025. All the people who thought maybe voting for Trump was going to slow this agenda down, sorry to say, you didn't get that. And we'll get into that in a moment. But when I look at the year ahead, when I think about 2026, I do see biometrics and digital IDs in our future. Just to kind of put this into perspective, the US back in late October announced mandatory biometric entry and exit system for foreigners, which literally just began last week on December 26th, the day after Christmas. So now, even though they've been testing it out for years, it is completely mandatory for any foreigner who is coming into the United States to have their eyeballs scanned and their face scanned and their fingerprints taken. And they're also talking about asking for 5 years worth of social media history. So there's that going on. We know that the EU also implemented a similar thing in October, which is going to be fully implemented by April. Even my home country of Mexico, or my adopted home country, they passed a package of laws this summer, which are supposed to go into effect in February and then sometime in the spring, talking about biometrics in order to access the internet and biometrics to access phone service. A lot of scary things that, they're being fought in the courts, and we'll see what happens. But the point is, it's advancing there. And we've been talking about this. I did this report just a couple of weeks ago, or Don Villa wrote this article a couple of weeks ago. Where's your line in the sand on digital ID? I did this one back in October. Digital IDs are the line in the sand. What are you willing to do to stay free? And that, my friends, remains the questions. What are you willing to do to stay free in 2026? Are you willing to give up travel? Are you willing to give up certain services? As we see more and more that different services, like I've heard Substack now is even starting to ask certain people to verify their ID. And as I mentioned to you earlier, also now, Facebook is asking me if I want to get my account back, I need to send them a selfie. I don't plan to comply. I'm willing to give up that Facebook page of 27,000 followers and the access that I have to it, even though some would say, Derrick, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Those are people who want to hear your message. Those are people who might come to hear you speak. Those are people who might be wanting to know that your new book is out, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm not going to comply to those systems. And I made a decision long ago that if that meant giving up flying and giving up certain, privileges and even rights, then I would do so, because I'm not going to just complain about it on the internet after all these years and then just go ahead and comply. I wish that there was a mass resistance movement. I wish that we were seeing more movement against these systems. I don't see it happening in the United States. I'm doing my best to try to raise awareness and work with others in Mexico. But unfortunately, it just doesn't seem like there is a lot of resistance. And it's sad to say that's just the reality that we're currently dealing with. I hope in 2026 that changes. So when I'm looking to the year ahead, my manifestation, my prayer, my hope is that there is more resistance to these things in 2026. Because if there is not, well, everything I just said is going to happen. Digital IDs, biometrics, and the world that we are in is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Already, I can empathize and completely understand why my non-American friends would not want to fly to the US when they're saying they're going to scan your face and fingerprints just to enter the country. They saying you're going to check 5 years worth of social media history. I'm pretty much, unfortunately, checking the EU off my list. I've had friends who visited parts of the EU recently, and they said, hey, they still allow you to opt out. They give you a lot of crap about it. But if you keep, stand your ground and push, eventually they will let you through. Well, how long is that going to last? I don't know. And, maybe I need to hurry up and plan some trips and visit parts of the world, because I haven't got to see the pyramids. I haven't got to go see Czechia, Czech Republic, where part of the Broze family is from. There's definitely a lot of this beautiful world that I want to see. And my hope, my prayer is that we do see mass movements of resistance in 2026, because if we don't, well, my friends, we should not expect anything but biometrics and digital IDs to advance. That's part of what I see coming in 2026. And also, I will talk about my recent documentary, Liberation 2030, in just a bit. And if I bring that into play, I'm manifesting, I'm calling into reality a future where people do exit and build from these systems, and they build lives that are less and less dependent on these systems, at the same time as they resist and they push back and mass protests and whatever is needed as these things rise, because they're not just going to disappear overnight. And as we've learned, those who've been paying attention, the masses, the vast majority of people, the so-called normies, they will comply. And even some of you who consider yourself awake are going to comply, just like we saw during COVID, because, well, you're not thinking of an exit plan. You're hoping that the courts are going to save you, or that the government's going to save you, or that voting's going to save you. And so in the end, you're going to have no choice but to comply, because you built a life dependent on their system. I'm not saying that's your fault, because maybe you were sold a lie about the American dream or whatever, but more and more people are realizing that's a fraud, and that if you build your life dependent on their systems, then you're going to be dependent on their rules, and that will be coercion and subtle compliance, and then less than subtle compliance as we move from the carrot phase to the stick phase of forcing people to comply with these systems, much like we saw during COVID 1984. Message being, in 2026, I hope you will focus on your exit and build journey and becoming less and less dependent on those systems. If you're interested in that, you can go to theconsciousresistance.com/EXB. That's for exit and build. And that is where I did the 45-day exit and build challenge. I started it last year, I want to say, in 2024. And then I've been promoting it throughout 2025. So I encourage you to check that out. Again, the exit and build challenge, or you can sign up for Civil and get an even more in-depth outline of how to do this with the 10-week opt-out challenge. And you can find that at civil.com/TCR. So let's go ahead now and begin our official year in review. I'm going to sort of whiz through some of these stories. I'm going to do my best to keep this at an hour and get back to hanging out with my family. But I've got quite a bit of stories to cover. I got a bunch of tabs here, but we can break these stories down into 6 main ones, and I'll just give you a heads up. This first one, we're talking about the OpenAI whistleblower who has allegedly, killed himself and doesn't seem to be, killed himself. We're going to talk about the technocracy and Trump, and how many ways that I've covered this and reported on this to make it clear in 2025 and Trump's first year back that the technocrats are in charge with Donald Trump. I'm also going to share a little bit of personal story, how my work has reached new audiences in 2025 by going on some bigger channels, connecting more with channels I was already connected to, and interviewing different people who I'm excited about talking with. And then also getting back to doing man on the street interviews is a big part of 2025. I did a few of them, and I plan to do that again in 2026. We're going to talk about fluoride and the updates on fluoride and how the Trump administration is failing on that part as well. A brief update about what we saw in the Utah ritual abuse case. And then, of course, Jeffrey Epstein, the story that just won't die. And then 5G is back in the news, and not in a good way. And my Pyramid of Power story series is coming to an end. I have a little bit of an update on the Conscious Agora as we move into 2026 and we start building our homes. And then I've got a few honorable mentions, just a couple of stories that weren't very huge, but I think are worth mentioning. So that's what we're going to get into tonight, guys. Again, thank you so much for being here. My name is Derrick Broze, and you're watching the Conscious Resistance Live, episode 175, our 2025 year in review. As I said, OpenAI whistleblower Sundar Suchir Balaji, and I spoke to his mom back in January 16th, almost a full year ago. Purnama Rao is his mom's name. She is the mother of this gentleman you can see on the screen, who had come out to the New York Times and was starting to be a whistleblower about things he was seeing in OpenAI, some of it relating to copyright, but apparently he had much bigger concerns, and he was going to be a key witness in the New York Times lawsuit against Microsoft and OpenAI. And then out of nowhere, allegedly kills himself. I interviewed his mom, as you can see here, and then I wrote an article for it, for The Last American Vagabond. Mother of OpenAI whistleblower accuses law enforcement and OpenAI of delaying justice for her son. And yeah, there's Sam Altman right there, the guy who's the head of OpenAI, who also happened to be partnered with Donald Trump on the Stargate project that we're going to talk about in just a moment. This was one heck of a way to start the year. These are the kind of interviews that I pride myself on getting, because this is real journalism. This story is being touched on briefly in the mainstream media, some in the independent media, but it's been largely kind of forgotten and moved on. And there are still developments happening, but I can definitely assure you that his parents do not believe that he killed himself. There's no sign in his life at all that he killed himself. There's signs of a struggle, though, in the house. He had just ordered some Uber. Most people don't order food. I guess maybe you could argue, well, he wanted a good last meal before he killed himself. But there's definitely a lot of telltale signs that this was a suicide. He was suicided, meaning he was murdered, and it was made to look like a suicide. And we don't have hard evidence that Sam Altman was involved. I'm not claiming that, but he definitely was close to the police, and he was close to the mayor. He's one of the mayor's assistants or advisors now in San Francisco. And also later in the year, Tucker Carlson actually interviewed Sam Altman, and he questioned him on this. And if you haven't seen those clips, I encourage you to go check it out. Not because I recommend Tucker really, but because there's that segment where he does ask about him about the whistleblower, and he looks guilty and just, I don't know. He's not, you make your own judgments, but that is one of the first big stories, is that this OpenAI whistleblower, who apparently this young genius who was going to start a new company with his friends, he had a lot of information to share about what OpenAI and Microsoft are up to. And he allegedly killed himself. So we will follow that in 2026. Another big one that I'm proud of, personal story here, is that I released my latest book, A Man of My Word, How I Overcame Addiction, Depression, and Mental and Physical Prisons. That one was just released last Monday, the 22nd. And let me go ahead and show you guys. I got my own copy. I got my first official copy of the book. As you can see here, that's me, my mugshot from 2005. And it's 400 pages. This is all the crazy stories and things I went through from 2003 till pretty much 2012. It's my story of addiction, of self-harm, of cutting, of drug abuse and alcohol abuse, of mental health struggles, and trying to make amends and heal from my very battered relationship with my birth father, and then overcoming that after getting locked up and finding my way out. Guys, you can find this at amanofmyword.com. I'm going to be talking a lot about this in 2026. There's going to be many interviews that I'll be doing starting in January. And so if you don't care about this, I guess you can tune it out. But this to me is just as important as my work on Jeffrey Epstein and 5G and everything else, because there's so many people out there who are struggling with addiction, even in our truth, freedom, conscious communities, whatever you want to call it, that don't get talked about enough. And so I will be talking much, much more about this throughout the year. And I'm just so excited to, this is a goal that I set for myself in 2025, that I knew I was going to write this. I started working on it over the summer, finished it, turned out to be 450 pages, worked with a good friend to do the cover, the design, worked with another good friend to do the formatting, and another good friend to do the editing. And I couldn't be prouder of this book. I'm so grateful, and I hope you guys will pick it up. You can find it at amanofmyword.com, all one word, amanofmyword.com, guys. So yeah, really, really excited to have this out. That's just a little bit of an update for myself. It's finally out. And I do have one more book that I'll be publishing in 2025. I know it's down to the wire, but we'll talk about that one in just a few minutes. So the next story, the big one that I have about a dozen links here to go through that we're going to just breeze through, but just to really hammer the point home, that Trump is is in bed with the technocrats from the very beginning. I mean, it was so obvious, like that picture that we have here. This is him swearing an oath as he is re-sworn into the Oval Office in his second term. You can see Elon Musk in the background. You can see his son Barron. You see his wife. You can see JD Vance and RFK back there, and all the big technocrats were there in the front row with Donald Trump when he was sworn in. And I started out the year with a Independent Media Alliance panel, which that's another thing. In 2025, the IMA, we did half dozen or more panels throughout the year, not just about Trump, but about AI, about digital IDs, about all kinds of important issues. And we started out the year making some 2025 and Trump 2.0 predictions. I think if you guys go back and look at this, you will find that we were right about everything that we talked about. Now, I also did this one at the beginning of the year, prepare for Trump's technocratic Zionist vision, which again, and I don't want to just keep saying this over and over, but I was right. Trump and the Zionists are closer than ever. And even today, as I'm recording this, Trump is meeting with Netanyahu in Florida at Mar-a-Lago to discuss the so-called peace plan, which we know is really, I mean, they even call it a technocratic plan. It's really a plan to carve up Gaza for people like Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, and other Zionists to turn it into real estate and to continue their genocide of the Palestinian people and their extermination of anybody who stands in the way. And so I was talking about that way back in January, and I proved to be right. Now, these next few articles here are kind of a series that I encourage people to read them together. I almost even want to turn this into a mini book, maybe a little zine, because I feel like it does a great job of outlining different points that build upon each other. This was written in February, Meet the Peter Thiel Acolytes in Donald Trump's second administration. And I just go through here, giving you some background on Peter Thiel and talk about all the different people related to Peter Thiel, friends with him, allies, colleagues, employees who are in the Trump administration. And it's quite an extensive list that were Peter Thiel employees or Peter Thiel adjacent. Obviously, Alex Karp as well, his co-founder at Palantir. And we've only seen their influence grow over the last 12 months. And then I did this one as well, Meet the Man Whose Philosophy Has Influenced Peter Thiel and the Technocrats, kind of building on that last one, about Curtis Yarvin, who is the philosopher who J.D. Vance credits for his awakening and who is connected to Peter Thiel. All of these, by the way, will be in the show notes, everything I'm covering here. These are different articles I've written for TLAV, and a mix of what we're doing is we're going over some of the articles I've written and then some of the video reports I've done at the Conscious Resistance. Because in case you're new and you don't know, I write articles on a monthly basis, weekly basis for The Last American Vagabond, and then I do video reports and interviews and podcasts on my own website, The Conscious Resistance. So this one is all about who is Curtis Yarvin, who is his history, what's his history, who are his influences, and how is this shaping Donald Trump's administration. We talk about the Machiavellians and what they call themselves the counter elites, and that is a really important article that I think more people need to read. Continuing on that trend, I reported how on day 2, Donald Trump partners with technocrats to promote mRNA injections, AI, and transhumanism as part of the Stargate project, which, as I said, with Larry Ellison, Sam Altman, and other technocrats there, SoftBank chief Masayoshi Son, and others. That came like right away. Right away, the signs were all there that Trump was not going to be, that he was going to be very friendly with the technocrats. I also released this mini documentary in March called Donald Trump, Peter Thiel, and the Technocrats, which is kind of a summary of everything I just covered. Meet the Peter Thiel acolytes, meet the man who's influencing J.D. Vance, the man who influenced Peter Thiel, and all of those connections. And then I put it in mini documentary form, which turned out to be, I think it's about 8 minutes long. Let me see. Well, got a error message here. It's about 8 minutes long or so, 15 minutes maybe at max. I encourage you guys to watch that. That will be in the show notes, and you can find it on BitChute, Odyssey, Substack, everywhere else. But it's just an important piece of the puzzle for people to really understand who Donald Trump is and who he's connected to. Then more developments. I continue to report on this throughout the year. Palantir, who of course connected to Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, partners with NATO on controversial AI project Maven. This one didn't get enough attention. More people need to know about what Project Maven is. If you want to understand it better, go check it out, my friends. I encourage you to do so. And then this one I did, again, same thing. I mean, as you notice, there's a trend that I'm building on. Like, how many Peter Thiel connections can we find? And you find them all over the Trump administration. This one is a bit of background. It's called Doge is Efficiency, a Gateway to Technocracy, and how the Department of Government Efficiency, when Elon Musk was there, that a lot of people praised, and in the end, most people realized didn't actually do the things he claimed he was going to do. But my argument was that, okay, they're claiming they're going to make government more efficient, but that's not so they can make it more efficient and obedient to the people. It's because they're trying to build a technocracy. And I do a little bit of a brief history on technocracy here, and then show that the movement that actually preceded the technocracy movement is known as the efficiency movement, which I hadn't heard of until a viewer had turned me on to it and told me about it. And I learned more about it. It's like, wow, yeah, these efficiency movement folks who came before the technocrats, they greatly influenced everything that we're seeing happen today. And even more connected to that, you have something called Taylorism, which was the predecessor to the efficiency and technocracy movement. So a lot happening there. But I think if you want to know the history of these movements, this article, Doge is Efficiency, a Gateway to Technocracy, is a great read here. This one, Welcome to the Palantir World Order, was me kind of it was sort of a part two to my other one, Meet the Peter Thiel Acolytes in the Trump administration, because it came a couple months later. And by that point, we started to kind of have a better idea of all the people in Trump's administration. So this one I wrote in April. So this is a couple months after Trump's already in office, and we've got a better handle on the whole situation. And this one looks at, again, just a list of SpaceX and Palantir. They're going to create a golden dome over America. Palantir is helping locate immigrants for Trump administration. Palantir partners with the IRS. Peter Thiel and nuclear energy. Overhauling the U.S. government's payment system, blind support for Israel. All of this stuff is connected to Peter Thiel and to Palantir. The Doge-Thiel connection, which I also covered in this video here, the Doge-Peter Thiel connection. There's Peter Thiel and Elon Musk back in the day with their original website, X.com and PayPal that they helped found. So I covered that there. And I just go through a list of all the different people who are connected, again, to Peter Thiel, Bilderberg, Palantir, etc., and how we're at the brink of a Palantir world order, and more people need to wake up to that. This, I think, is one of my most important and most well-received articles of 2025. If you haven't seen that one, do check it out in the show notes. Then I looked at how the real ID, voter ID, and digital ID are kind of all tied together in different ways, and that this is the future of American identification. Now, of course, we know that Trump didn't start the Real ID program. This was going on since, since 2005. It's been happening way back then, post 9/11, but it's been passed down and kicked down the can. It did, come into full implementation, at least partially, in May of this year, and it's going to continue throughout the rest of Trump's term. And what I argue in this article is that the Real ID and the push for voter ID to secure the elections is all tied to an eventual digital ID, likely in the form of what they're calling digital driver's license or mobile driver's license. Again, I think an underread article, one that more people need to recognize. And I want to remind you, everything I'm covering here, this is just in my second story of technocracy and Trump. These are all the different ways throughout 2025 that I've noticed that I was following the trends of Trump and the technocrats collaborating together to build the technocratic surveillance state. I wrote this one in August. Big tech and AI firms are winning, in quotations, under Trump's second administration. And again, Trump, talking about the different things Trump has done, the technocratic AI action plan, Trump's technocratic health tech plan, that RFK wants everybody wearing wearables and things like that. There's so many different angles to this, and it really is hard to keep up. And because of that, I actually wrote a 3-part series starting in, I think it was September, October, called The Technocratic Trump Administration, which I tried to do a bit of a recap of everything that we saw throughout the first year of Trump. And obviously more has continued. But this one, part 1, is focused on public-private partnership. Part 2 is about Trump administration pressuring and consolidating the media with his allies, Zionist technocratic allies. And then part 3 is about the Zionist infiltration, how that continues to expand under Trump. So each of those articles, every one of those 3 in this series, Technocratic Trump Administration, which will be in the show notes, is worth your time. They each have so many different pieces of the puzzle. And I know I'm giving you a lot of information here, but I put out a lot of content and I want you to be as most informed as possible. So once again, everything will be in the show notes for you to review at your own leisure. Now, I did this interview back in March with Ian Carroll, and I tried to get Ian to do another one in October, because in October 2024, right before the election, We did a very big podcast together where we kind of had a little bit of a slight debate about why Ian was going to vote for Trump no matter what and support RFK through Trump, and how I was saying, dude, look at the Peter Thiel connections, look at the Palantir connections. There's a lot of things to be skeptical. And he went ahead and did it anyways and told his people to support him. Then 60 days in, we did this conversation, friendly dialogue, the good, the bad, the ugly, about this whole situation. And I think, again, I was correct in the things that I was warning about and telling Ian to look out for. I also reported in June, Detachment 201, the merger of big tech and the U.S. Army, how the Trump administration has initiated with the U.S. Army a first of its kind partnership with executives from big tech firms, including Palantir, Meta, and OpenAI. They called it Detachment 201, the Army's Executive Innovation Corps. That's a short little article that I put together here at theconsciousresistance.com that I encourage you to check that out in case you missed that one, because again, this line between government and so-called private sector surveillance tech is so thin already, but now this is like a merging of the military with these folks, which isn't a surprise, as what I reported earlier, how NATO is working with Palantir on this AI project, Maven. I mean, it's just becoming one giant blob of nastiness. And then over the summer, Trump was very much promoting his big, beautiful bill, which I call the Big Brother bill. And I wrote this article, how it's expanding the U.S. surveillance state. And I go through there and just talk about all the different pieces of it that were included in the big, beautiful bill that will and continue to expand the surveillance state, specifically as it relates to the border and things of that sort. So I encourage you to check that one out. That was from the summer. Trump's Big Brother bill expands the U.S. surveillance state. Now, here's another one more recently that I did, a little clip from my show a couple weeks ago. Trump gives the technocrats their wet dream with AI executive order. We talked about this, how Trump's executive order on AI, which is basically trying to restrict any states from being able to any states from being able to enact their own regulations and rules around AI. And instead, the federal government is saying they're going to sue any states that try to do that. So if you have if your state wants to try to protect the kids and pass AI, restrictions or regulations, the federal government says they're going to sue them. I mean, which is pretty insane. And then you can see here, while he's signing the AI executive order, he's got David Sachs, he's got Howard Lutnick, who are some of the Palantir, Peter Thiel, swamp creatures, acolytes that I've warned you about in my previous reporting here. And then, so we're going to switch gears real quick here for a moment, but those are just some of the stories that I've covered this year. I mean, I know I just went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15 to 20 different articles and interviews and podcasts outlining this. I don't think there's any way that any honest person can truly tell me that Trump is not in the technocrats' back pocket. What I've heard throughout the year, though, throughout 2025, and I'm sure you guys have heard it too out there in social media land, is, Derrick, keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer. Oh my God, if I hear that again in 2026, I'm going to blow my brains out. I mean, it's just the level of coping and of cognitive dissonance and ignorance is just off the charts, guys. But this is what we're facing. People who don't want to deal with reality. I think the evidence is abundant. I just went through briefly reports that I did over the last year of the first year in Trump's second term. And it's obvious, it's clear. Okay. I'm not gonna belie the point too much. It's obvious if you're being honest with yourself. Before we go ahead to our next review in 2025, I want to remind you guys one big thing. Looking forward to 2026. The People's Reset 2026 is coming up in just 4 weeks, guys. It's going to be streamed completely for free on our website, thepeoplesreset.org. You can watch it Wednesday through Sunday, Wednesday, January 28th to February 1st. It's live from 10 a.m. Central till 12:30 p.m. Central. Then we take an hour and a half break for lunch. We come back from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. So you're getting literally 5 hours of a day for 5 days. That's 25 hours of free content, all solutions focused talks, talking about permaculture, mental, physical, spiritual health, talking about building parallel systems, talking about empowering privacy-based technology, community building, etc. All kinds of great speakers, guys. It's an opportunity for you. If you can't make it in person, which we are still selling tickets, you can come to Morelia, Mexico, this beautiful city that I live in Mexico. I would love to see you. I'd love to connect with you in person. As I've been telling you guys for a while, I would love to have my Conscious Resistance crew in person, and I still have a coupon code for the Conscious Resistance family. If you want to get a ticket and you think you can make it still, then you can use the coupon code Conscious Resistors, and you'll get a 15% off tickets that are currently available for just 288 USD. But if you can't make it, which I know it's kind of late in the game, you can watch the entire event for free at thepeoplesreset.org, guys, because this is something I've been hosting since COVID 1984. I think it's an important event. It's an activation. People come together in person. They have a great time. We have family activities, kids activities, 2 different concerts with conscious performers of all types, 35 solutions-focused talks, 50-plus solutions-focused workshops, community, cacao ceremony, all kinds of just great gatherings and people coming together for a good time. Thepeoplesreset.org. If you can't make it in person, I encourage you to watch for free. And if you can't watch it live, we post all of the talks for free on the People's Reset Odyssey channel. So you really have no excuse, my friends. But I would love to really, in all honesty, I would truly love to see all of you out there in person in Morelia. If not, I'll see you guys on the stream. So one of the other big things that I wanted to mention, just a little personal story here, that has been a big part of my work in 2025, is that I've had the opportunity to get out on more big channels and to continue to further relationships with people that I've already known. For example, Kim Iverson. We started doing interviews together in 2024. Kim has invited me on her show a couple times, and that continued in 2025. And so right at the beginning of the year, she had me to come on and talk about Trump's technocratic plans for Stargate, as well as the Star Shield program that a lot of people didn't know about. That was early in February. Thank you, Kim. I've already got an interview scheduled with Kim for 2026 to talk about my memoir, so stay tuned for that. I was on Redacted, I think 5 times this year. This is one back in February. The technocrats have control of Trump's second administration, talking about similar things. Star Shield, Peter Thiel, the Stargate announcement. Their channel has 3 million followers. I don't agree with every one of their opinions. You don't have to agree with every one of their opinions. They support my work, though, and they give me a big boost. And so what? I will take that, my friends. I'm going to take the boost, even if we don't agree on every topic, because you don't need to agree with every topic with anybody in order to do an interview. I think that's a lot of people misunderstand that. Both as a journalist interviewing somebody, I don't need to agree with all their opinions. And as an interviewee being interviewed by somebody on their channel, I don't need to agree with all their opinions. I will take the clicks and the views in order to boost my work out there. I also went on Redacted in April to talk about the Pyramid of Power with Clayton Morris. And I went on Tinfoil Hat podcast back in May with Sam Tripoli to talk about the Pyramid of Power. Again, I don't need to agree with every meme Sam posts or every opinion he has. I went on the Jimmy Dore show in June of this year for the first time. Trump's implementing mass surveillance system in the U.S., talking about similar topics, Peter Thiel, Palantir, etc. And I'm hoping to go back on Jimmy's show in 2026. I've been talking with his team, whether it's about my memoir, whether it's about some of the other work I've been doing. I'm really hoping to get back on that podcast. I also went on Ryan Matta's podcast, I think a couple of times, but Ryan had me on in August to talk about the Pyramid of Power. And again, very gracious to him for having me on. And then again, went back on Redacted to talk about the Pyramid of Power again back in August. So I had several interviews about the Pyramid of Power throughout the year, and very excited for that, to go back on Redacted a couple times. My friend over at the Mel K show, she had me on to talk about the Pyramid of Power. Mel also had me on just last week to talk about my memoir. I'll be posting that on my channel this coming week. And then in addition to being interviewed by people and going on bigger channels, I also got to interview people who I have respect for, including David Knight, as you can see here. This was in April. David Knight on questioning Trump's agenda and remaining principled. He's a former InfoWars employee and somebody who I think has a lot of credibility and a lot of integrity. And so was grateful to to talk to him. And in another interesting crossover, I had a dual podcast, Swapcast, as some people call it, with Jason Bashirs, also known as Archaics. And Are We in a Simulation Headed Towards Cataclysm? We had like a 2-hour conversation, I think, all about this. So you can find that at his website and on mine, of course. It's in the show notes. Check that out. That was a really interesting dialogue. I also got to talk to former Congressman Ron Paul for the first time. I interviewed him briefly, at an event a couple of years ago, but this was the first kind of sit down interview, if you will, through the internet. Former Congressman Ron Paul discusses Israel, 9/11, Elon Musk, and Peter Thiel. This was in January. So this is very early on at the beginning of Trump's administration. And I'd like to do another one with Ron Paul in January 2026, maybe a 1 year later. Hey, Dr. Paul, we've seen now where Trump has gone. He was maybe a little more optimistic than I was, but based on what I've seen with his reporting, I think he is not optimistic anymore, and he can see everything that I've been talking about here with Trump. I also got to interview Professor Richard Spence, formerly professor at University of Idaho, who is actually in the Pyramid of Power documentary series, and he does a lot of great work. This interview is called How to Investigate Conspiracies and Secret Societies with Richard Spence. I think it's well worth your time and an interesting, empowering interview for those of us who actually want to investigate conspiracies with an eye towards the credible, objective research, not just believing every single theory that exists out there, but trying to take a credible look at these topics and how they influence our world and how secret societies and conspiracies have influenced history. I also got to connect to the author Gareth Gore about his new book on Opus Dei, exposing Opus Dei's web of influence, corruption, and trafficking. That one was a very interesting interview. Now, the other thing, in addition to going on people's channels, in addition to interviewing cool people, I also kind of got back in a small way, but got back to doing man on the street interviews, which is something that I've always loved doing. And if you followed me for years, you might know that was something I used to do very much in the beginning. I learned from my old friend Adam Kokesh how to do man on the street interviews. He was very good at it. And I started picking that up over the years. But as my life has gotten busier, I have not been on the streets as much to do that. But starting with the No Kings protest in Houston in June, I did go there and I did a whole man on the street interview with a bunch of different people and let them speak for themselves rather than assuming things about them. That was cool. Then in October, I did it again at the No Kings protest in Houston, interviewed 4 or 5 more people. Those are all at theconsciousresistance.com. And then even in Morelia in Mexico, I did some man on the street interviews that were in the video was in English and Spanish, but interviewing people there after they were protesting related to the assassination of a local mayor who was against the cartel violence and was actually trying to do something about it. So I plan to, looking forward to 2026, I definitely plan to get back to doing more man on the street interviews. And I didn't mention that earlier, but when I was saying, do you want me to do the Conscious Resistance Live podcast, or should I do the Activation podcast, or should I do more documentaries? Let me know. Do you want me to do more man on the street stuff? I think that is informative and it can be empowering. It's educational. It helps you understand what people are thinking. And like I said, I think that's better than just assuming you know what people think and actually letting them speak for themselves. So yeah, that was all cool, going on people's podcasts, interviewing cool people, and getting back to the streets. Now, my fourth story that I think is important in 2025 is the fluoride lawsuit, which unfortunately, as I reported here in July, Trump's EPA continues the Biden administration's appeal of the historic fluoride ruling. And I wrote this article about it. I did several videos on this. I interviewed Michael Connett, who was the lead attorney in the historic fluoride lawsuit, which way back in September 2024, a federal judge said that fluoride poses an unreasonable risk to the neurodevelopment of children. And right before he left office, Joe Biden or whoever had their hand up his butt and was puppeteering him, they said they were going to appeal this decision via the EPA and the Department of Justice. And then Trump gets into office and he continues it. He continued to do the exact same thing, which was not surprising to me. And I'm going to continue to follow this in 2026 as people are, as we're trying to learn more about this and where it's headed. I've also been kind of sort of related to this, talking about how many people, I think, are realizing that MAHA, there may have been some good things that happened related to vaccines or some conversations that are starting, but overall the MAHA movement, I think, was a big play and a big distraction when people were being fooled and not actually getting what they thought they were. And related to fluoride, I also exclusively reported, and I've not seen anybody pick this up in Houston or elsewhere, exclusively reported after filing open records request and getting confirmation via emails that the city of Houston, Texas, where I'm originally from, is the largest U.S. city to stop water fluoridation. And it didn't come because they rallied together and they tried to, stop it and they held a vote or anything. It literally just seemed like quietly behind the scenes, according to these emails I found, and that were released to me, that the city just decided to stop paying for fluoride, and nobody really kind of told anybody. And so they've just kept it quiet behind the scenes. And yeah, I don't know, but that's pretty cool. And I hope to get more information on that in 2026. Guys, I want to remind you again, this show is brought to you by Civil, civl.com/TCR is the best place to find out more about Civil, to get signed up. The thing about this, guys, if you want to see the Pyramid of Power, which we're going to talk about in just a moment, the 17-part documentary series I've produced for the last 5 years, if you want to actually be the first to see that, then you need to sign up at Civil, because it's going to be coming out literally any day now as I'm recording this, and it will be exclusively on Civil for 5 weeks before it goes out publicly in late January all over the world. But if you want to see it first, sign up at civil.com/TCR, and you can see it there before anybody else. So I encourage you to do so. Like I told you before, it's only $5 a month or $50 a year. You can use the code TCR20 and you can get a 20% discount on that and be the first to see that. Thank you guys at Civil for supporting me this year. I look forward to potentially partnering more in 2026. Another important story for me that I covered in 2025 was related to the Utah ritual abuse case that I've been covering for the last 3 years. Unfortunately, the update is not a good one. In April, ritual accused abuser, child abuser, David Hamblin, a disgraced therapist, all the charges against him were dismissed. They were dismissed first in March and then again in April. And the charges against his wife also were dismissed. His ex-wife, who was also accused of many of the disgusting, disturbing things that I covered over the years. And yeah, I mean, that's all I really have to say on that, because the charges were dismissed with prejudice means that they cannot be refiled in the future. So there's not going to be any hope of a future case against him. If you find a better judge, or, and I encourage you to go back and read this whole series, because there was a bunch of tomfoolery taking place where people were clearly dragging their feet, trying to prevent this case from making it to trial. And the victims were not served. Justice was not served in this case. But I think that at least deserves your attention for at least a moment. And speaking of abuse, the other big story is Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, despite everything that Donald Trump tried to do in 2025, did not die. The story did not go away. It continues in 2025, and it's only probably going to get more attention as we end 2025 and go into 2026, because they're reporting they found millions of documents now that they still have to go through. But as far as my personal reporting, back in July when Epstein was in the news, I called into the local Houston radio. I just happened to be in Houston, and I dropped an Epstein truth bomb on the radio. It was about 7 minutes long, little kind of snippet that I called into them and said, hey, you guys don't seem to understand the Jeffrey Epstein case. Let me fill you in on what's going on here. And I was proud to get that moment. I always like when I can sort of culture jam and inject some truth into society, when people are just driving around, listening to their car, and all of a sudden they might hear my voice talking some truth about Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I also went to this Stand With Survivors rally in September, early September in Washington, D.C., where Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna, and Marjorie Taylor Greene and some of the alleged victims of Jeffrey Epstein were in person. I got to film the whole press conference. I got to interview some of the survivors and talk with them. I highly encourage you to go back and see this. I also did a little debrief where I was there with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, and just kind of shared my thoughts on what this means, because I've been following the Jeffrey Epstein story since 2016. I produced my documentary in 2018, and it's quite a shock and quite interesting to see how far it's come, and to see that we are steps away from the Capitol building talking about this. Like I said, do I think there's going to be great revelations and people are going to finally go down? No, I don't. But I do think that this story won't die. And no matter how Trump said it's stupid, it's a hoax, and we're still talking about Jeffrey Epstein, all this stuff, it just won't go away. And I think that is a win in itself, that they cannot make it go away. Now, I just recently released this article on The Last American Vagabond about Les Wexner, who is, of course, Jeffrey Epstein's colleague and money man, and part of the Mega Group, which is a high-powered, influential group of Zionist lobbyists. Epstein colleague Les Wexner can't escape the spotlight. About Les Wexner and about some emails that were released through Jeffrey Epstein's Yahoo account showing that they lied, that Jeffrey Epstein and Les Wexner's relationship was more extensive than the Wexner Foundation claimed. And then also how Les Wexner is dodging subpoenas from former victims of abuse at Ohio State University. Ohio is, of course, where Les Wexner is based. And Les Wexner is the former CEO of the Limited brand, Victoria's Secret. And he at one point was a member of the board of trustees of Ohio State University. So no matter what he's trying to do here, he is not able to escape the spotlight. I also did a video report on that as well. Again, everything is in the show notes. And I'm hoping that people like Les Wexner will continue to be in the spotlight in 2026. We cannot let these people go away because look, Jeffrey Epstein allegedly killed himself. Jean-Luc Brunel allegedly killed himself. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison for now, and she's definitely trying hard to get Trump to pardon her. And Les Wexner's just walking free. And other people, these co-conspirators, are walking free. That's where I think the focus should be. Yes, we should pay attention to people who are abused, but also understanding the bigger network that Epstein was a part of, the financial network, the transhumanist eugenicist network, and the fact that people who are involved in that are roaming free today. That is something that I think needs to be explored more in 2026. Now, another big story, my sixth big story of 2020, excuse me, my seventh, we've covered quite a bit already. My seventh big story of 2025 that I've reported on is 5G. 5G is back in the news. First off, in February of 2025, I celebrated the 5-year anniversary of the release of my documentary, The 5G Trojan Horse, which was originally released February 16th, 2020. And I'm proud of this documentary because it covers my struggles to expose and push back against 5G in Houston, Texas, and to confront politicians like current FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, as well as Ted Cruz and others. And if you haven't seen that, please do go check it out. And then just a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I wrote this article, Trump's FCC seeks to strip even more local control over 5G rollout. And this is because the Trump administration, going back to the first term, has had extensive relationships with the big wireless industry through the FCC. And I covered this all in this article. I won't rehash it here. But if you want to know the truth about this, you need to read this article. And also, I will remind you, this is the last reminder that if you care about this, the FCC has proposed new rules which will strip even more local power from local bodies that are trying to stop the rollout of 5G for whatever reason. You have until December 31st at midnight to comment, and there's a link to it in this article if you want to go ahead and submit comments to the FCC. Again, I'm skeptical if that's going to matter, if that's going to mean anything, but I don't want to tell you to do nothing. And so if you want to do something, you want to try to have your voice heard, you can do that at the link in this article. Like I said, it expires December 31st. I hope it matters. I hope something stops these psychopaths who just think they can get away with anything they want, regardless of what you want. But I do think we're going to hear more about 5G and even 6G in 2026. So stay tuned for that, my friends. Before we wrap up for today, I want to remind you guys that the best way to support me is at theconsciousresistance.com and on our shirts page. If you want to get a shirt, go ahead and pick up a shirt from us. We got 8 different designs. You are powerful, you are beautiful, you are free. I'm not sure why this one isn't showing up right. You are creator, the conscious resistance, no masters, no slaves, holistic anarchism, liberate all life, exit build. There we go. You are creator, all that stuff. I mean, we have 8 designs. We're going to make more in 2026. Thank you to everybody who orders a shirt. That is one of the best ways to support my work. That money goes directly into my pocket, into the operation, so we can continue to do this good work. So if you're looking to get some new shirts, new swag for 2026, go to theconsciousresistance.com, click on the shop tab. You can see my books and you can see my shirts there as well. Now, one of the other big things that I did in 2025, guys, is nearly complete the pyramid of power. It is finally coming to an end after working on this for 5 years, starting in 2020. It is finally coming to an end. And this year in 2025, we released chapter 16, Religion and Secret Societies, which is a big one. And that's like the top of the pyramid as far as I'm concerned. If you haven't seen that one, go ahead and check it out. It features Adam Green, Mark Passio, and David Icke. And then we also released back in September, Chapter 17, Volume 1 of the Top of the Pyramid, which is the beginning of the end. This is a 45-minute episode. And the final conclusion, Volume 2, I don't want to jinx it, but it's supposed to be out by December 31st. My editor is at home working so hard, working his butt off. Thank you, brother, for all the work you do. We're trying to release it and have it completely done and released by 2025. Of course, as I said earlier, it'll be available on Civil first for 5 weeks. So sign up over there if you want to see it first. And then at the end of January 2026, it'll be available publicly. And Volume 1 features Peter Dale Scott, Patrick Wood, and Richard Grove. Volume 2 features Richard Grove, Patrick Wood, James Corbett, David Icke, Mark Passio, Adam Green, Catherine Austin Fitz, Larkin Rose. I'm sure I'm forgetting more people, but it's the big epic conclusion. It's an hour and 45 minutes long, and I cannot wait to share it with you guys. It is, I think, part of my life's work. And you can watch all of the episodes at thepyramidofpower.net. And also, the Pyramid of Power book is going to be out on December 31st as well, 2025. So if you want to read the book before you watch the conclusion, the book will be available publicly first before the final episode. And I'll tell you guys more about that in the coming weeks. We'll put a link to that at thepyramidofpower.net. But for now, just stay tuned because we are releasing a Pyramid of Power book. In addition to my new memoir, we're also releasing the Pyramid of Power book, and I can't wait to share it with you. And just one other note on documentaries. Earlier this year, I did release the Liberation 2030 mini documentary. So while we've been working on the Pyramid of Power, we also still releasing other mini documentaries, including the Peter Thiel documentary earlier in the year and the Liberation 2030 documentary. If you haven't seen that one and you need a little bit of dose of inspiration, go check that out, my friends. I think you will enjoy it. Now, the big final story for me is that I got to work on the Conscious Agora, the community project that I've been working on for 5 years as well. And just in November, I released a 5-year progress report detailing all about it. We did a walk and talk, walking through the property and telling you guys everything that went into it. This is another part of my life's work. This is something that we're working on long into the future, and 2026 is going to be some big developments. And this is one of the things, as I was asking you guys earlier, what type of content you want to see from me. One of the things you can expect is that I'm going to be doing more permaculture content because we're going to be focusing on building our home very soon. And I'm going to document that process. So there'll be more walk and talks from the Conscious Agora, from the land. There'll be more documenting our building process. We're going to do a hempcrete workshop in the spring of 2026. Lots of big things coming up, guys, and I can't wait because this to me is the answer. This is the solution. This is exit and build, and I don't just talk about it and scream at you through a camera and hope that you do it. I live it, I breathe it, and I hope that you will adopt exit and build strategy in whatever ways that means something to you, because that really is the solution to me. Not sitting around waiting for politicians to save you, waiting on courts to save you, waiting on me to save you, or even your chosen religious savior to save you. I believe the Creator wants us to take action and take control and responsibility of our own lives and not sit around and wait for Q or Jesus or anybody else to come save us. I think we actually need to do something about it because the Creator breathed life into us. And to do that, well, you need to move forward. You need to build and you need to make plans for yourself. At least that's where I'm coming from. So yeah, those are my big stories of 2025. I'm just going to throw out a couple of honorable mentions real quick. Stop the brain drain, put down your smartphone. This is a report I did about a study highlighting the impacts on smartphones on our brains and on kids' brains. And you might have heard this term throughout the year, brain rot, especially if you have young children like I do, nieces and nephews, and you've heard 6-7 over and over throughout the year. Oh, you understand what brain rot is then, or at least you have concerns about it. I encourage you to check this out, guys. And maybe in 2026, spend less time on your smartphones. I encourage the kids to get off the smartphones and spend less time on them as well. Another honorable mention, I did this interview with my friends over at, what is they're called? Sound the Alarm, Tracy Derwin and Shane Well, I always forget how to say your name, Shane. I apologize. What really happened during the 2023 Maui fires? I encourage you guys to check that one out because that was a new topic to me. Of course, I heard people talk about it, but I never really looked into it. And we did that interview back in April. And then the last one, my friend Teese over at Conspiracy Synergy, he followed me around last January at the People's Reset, and he released this really awesome mini documentary about my life and about my work, the Conscious Resistance mini documentary. You can find it on our website under our documentary tabs, or of course in the show notes. And that's where we're going to end it, guys. As always, if you want to support me, go to theconsciousresistance.com/invest. Support me on Buy Me a Coffee. Support me on Substack. Send me some crypto. Send me some love mail or hate mail in my P.O. box. Don't send me checks. I can't cash checks. But if you want to support me in 2026, that's the best way to do so, guys. All right. So as you can see here, my camera's flashing, dying. What a way to end the last episode of 2025. I'm so grateful to each of you guys. I hope you do something powerful with your New Year's Eve. I hope you celebrate it with people you love. I hope you do something wonderful with the next set of 12 months you have to accomplish your goals as we move into 2026, just 4 years until 2030. And that doesn't mean that these crazy technocrats, that their agendas and their plans are going to magically happen in 2030, but it's something we should be aware of and we should think about. And we should be thinking about, what are we doing in our lives to move closer to liberation 2030 instead of the Great Reset, instead of Agenda 2030, instead of all their garbage. That's what I'm focused on. That's what I'm going to be working on in 2026. That's what I'm going to be giving great, gratitude and thanks for as I end 2025 with my loved ones. And I hope whatever you do, again, that you stay safe, you spend it with someone you love, and take stock of the things you were able to accomplish. Give yourself some grace for the things you didn't get to, and yeah, let's give ourselves some inspiration, some motivation to do really awesome things in 2026. I'm going to end with the same song I did last week because I just think it's such a good song from Natalie Rise, who will be performing in just 4 weeks at the People's Reset. It's called Fear and Dread. And the idea here is, let's not go into 2026. Let's not end 2025 in fear and dread. The world can be dark. The world can be heavy, but we're still in control. We're still manifesting the world that we want. And you are doing it every single day, whether you realize it or not. So think about the power of your mind, the power of your heart, the power of your spirit. Focus on that as you go into 2026. Even though the struggles and the trials seem insurmountable sometimes, we have the ability to overcome them and to create the world that we want, guys. So thank you so much for giving me a lot of support in 2025, whether that was sharing my work or financial support or just watching my documentaries and my different reports. I hope to see you in the comment section or in person in 2026, because I'm coming on tour in 2026 and I can't wait to see you guys. So as always, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free, my friends. Peace.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.